Hurricane Hilary directly impacted California and the southwestern U.S. recently in August 2023. Meteorologists warned the public for flooding and strong winds, but one odd headline kept making the top pages. The world was buzzing about the hurricane's rare northward track into the U.S. Pacific hurricanes that hit land are already uncommon. Only a handful occur each year, but having one strike California is a seriously exceptional event. I was intrigued. How often do Pacific hurricanes hit the US? How does Hilary compare with other past desert southwest hurricanes? In this video, we'll look at 5 other hurricanes from the past that have laid their eyes on the Golden State, from a landfalling tropical storm on Long Beach to a Category 4 hurricane that deluged the Californian deserts. First on our list is Category 4 Nora, which clocked winds of 130 miles an hour during its peak off the Mexican coastline. Normally, hurricanes that form in the eastern Pacific move northwest or due westward, under the influence of high pressure to the north. However, this blocking high is occasionally disrupted by low pressure systems that swing storms northward, especially during El Niño years. Nora formed on September 16th, around the peak of hurricane season. Warm waters and low wind shear, caused by the 1997 Super Niño, allowed the storm to quickly strengthen to Category 4 status by the 20th. At this time, however, a trough dug towards the hurricane, imparting southerly winds and turning it from the northwest to due north. The hurricane made 2 landfalls in Baja California before slamming California with tropical storm winds and very heavy rainfall. Low-lying areas like LA actually benefited from the rains, which were generally under an inch in those locations. A record-breaking drought was softened, with LA receiving its first rains in almost 7 months. However, other regions weren't as lucky. North of Escondido, floodwaters rose 2 feet in 15 minutes, covering roads with a mix of water and motor oil. 3 people died due to traffic accidents directly caused by reduced visibility from the storm's rainfall. Overall, 125,000 people lost power in the greater Los Angeles area, mainly due to the rain. Nora was a fairly large storm, however, and impacts extended into neighboring Arizona. The Narrows Dam failed, plunging the nearby town of Odile into a sand-infused flood. In the mountains of southwestern Arizona, over a foot of rain fell, more than double the yearly average, and this rainfall would mark the second wettest tropical cyclone in the state's history, only behind a 1951 disturbance. This unnamed storm, dubbed the Long Beach Tropical Storm, is unique in that it actually made direct landfall on California. Normally, tropical cyclones that impact the southwest either stay offshore or make landfall in Mexico before continuing north into the US. One major reason is due to the cold ocean waters from the California current, hostile to tropical cyclones. However, this 1939 storm was different. After peaking off the Mexican coast as a Category 1, it veered due north, making landfall near San Pedro, California as a moderate tropical storm. The storm brought nearly 6 inches of rain to areas like LA and Pasadena, a monthly record, and some mountainous regions were slammed by a foot of rainfall in a matter of hours. Over 30 people died from the torrential rainfall, which washed away a whole railroad near Indio, California. Also, due to the lack of modern forecasting at the time, almost nobody knew about the impending storm. 6 people drowned on beaches when the wind suddenly picked up to over 40 miles an hour, bringing a storm surge. People in boats, however, fared worse. At least 48 people on boats were killed. One vessel capsized while returning to dock, killing 24 out of its 26 passengers on board. The 2 survivors swam in 60-degree waters ashore, before walking 5 miles to the closest city. Overall, the storm killed 93 people. It was also the only tropical storm or hurricane to make a direct landfall in California during the 20th century, a testament to just how rarely these storms impact the desert Southwest. However, the storm did end a brutal heat wave that killed over 90 people. Also, outcry over the lack of preparedness by the government in the storm led to the creation of a weather office in Southern California. Almost 40 years after the Long Beach storm, Tropical Storm Kathleen formed well off the Mexican coastline on September 7, 1976. Moving quickly northwest, hurricane hunters found peak winds of 80 miles an hour on the 10th, making the storm a Category 1 hurricane. However, this peak didn't last long. Within a few hours, Kathleen weakened under cold ocean waters to a tropical storm, making landfall on the Baja California peninsula. Unlike most hurricanes, Kathleen weakened slowly over California, bringing gale-force winds to the coast and lots of flooding. A record-breaking 14.76 inches of rain fell in the San Gabriel Mountains east of LA. This caused mudslides, burying railroads, and destroying a quarter-mile stretch of Interstate 8. In the small town of Ocotillo, California, which receives a mere 2.86 inches of rain per year, 4 to 6 feet of water, originating from torrential rainfall and heavy runoff, buried the town. Over 70% of the town was completely destroyed, and 6 people drowned in the muddy deluge. 175 residents had to be evacuated. Railroads and highways across California and the desert southwest were mangled by rainfall that matched the yearly average. Although the rain was the primary threat, Kathleen also expanded in size prior to landfall, broadening its wind field. A wind gust of 76 miles an hour was recorded as far east as Yuma, Arizona, where trees were uprooted and roof shingles blown off. A palm tree in Arizona fell on a mobile home, killing the man inside. In total, wind and flooding caused $160 million in damages within California alone, one of the costliest tropical cyclones in state history. 12 people were sadly killed by the storm. In 1858, weather reporting was hardly a shell of what it is today. There were no satellites, no official weather offices, and weather maps were just being invented. So when a hurricane approached San Diego on October 2, 1858, people were not prepared. A moderate El Niño event, coupled with abnormally low wind shear and warm waters near the Pacific coastline, allowed the storm to strengthen as it veered northeast. The storm stayed mere miles offshore, but the northeast quadrant, the area that usually receives the worst winds, brushed Southern California. This remains the only tropical cyclone to impact California at hurricane intensity. San Diego received the worst impacts, with heavy rain and hurricane-force wind gusts that destroyed a windmill and snapped trees. 3 schooners were damaged out at sea, one of them severely. The suburbs of LA received up to 7 inches of rain, over 10 times the average October rainfall. This influx of water damaged crops and trees. Since it was the mid-19th century, the area wasn't very developed. However, a 2004 study found that if the San Diego hurricane were to occur today, it would cause $500 million in damages to California. This would rank as the costliest tropical cyclone in Californian history, easily eclipsing storms like Nora and Kathleen. The hurricane is forgotten in San Diego history today, but its uniqueness as the only California impact at hurricane strength has continued for over 160 years since. The most recent example on the list, Hurricane Odile peaked as a 140-mile-an-hour Category 4 before riding the Baja California peninsula into the U.S. Southwest. A tropical wave originated off of Africa in late August and cruised at a low latitude into the Pacific. By the 10th, thunderstorms surrounding the wave became organized enough for designation as Tropical Storm Odile. The storm was initially plagued by wind shear, but the shear abated on the 12th, allowing Odile to begin a rapid intensification phase to Category 4 status as it trudged northward. As colder waters began to weaken the hurricane, Odile made landfall as a strong Category 3 on the Baja California peninsula, then rode up the spine of the peninsula and dissipated eastward into southern Arizona. Moisture fanned northward across California and Arizona. Almost an inch of rain, 5 times the monthly average, fell in a single hour at Montgomery Field Airport. Strong thunderstorms cut power lines and downed trees, even flipping over an airplane at the airport. San Diego had over 60,000 customers without power. Arizona, which was closer to the storm center, received a 75-mile-an-hour wind gust. Overflowing rivers prompted the closing of the Palominas and Hereford bridges. Further north in Zion National Park, flash flooding stranded 2 hikers in the Narrows. Sadly, only one of them could escape. Heavy rain was reported as far east as eastern Texas, where 15 inches of rain fell in gale. El Paso and Houston received minor flooding damages, and 2 people, a sheriff and senior citizen, were killed from floodwaters. Naturally, seeing this list of hurricane impacts on California can create a lot of questions. Most importantly, is California becoming a more frequent target for hurricanes? The answer, put simply, is no. Direct impacts to the Golden State have been rare, around 1 storm per decade. Climate change may play a role in hurricane frequency in this area, but more research must be done to strengthen this connection. And it's also noteworthy that while these storms are destructive, the cold Californian waters and drier atmosphere mean that any hurricanes are bound to be weakening tropical storms once they hit the desert Southwest. Fingers crossed that we don't need to worry about a Katrina or Harvey or Irma hitting the Californian coast, because the atmosphere isn't suitable enough for such a storm. Still, even gale-force winds and a couple inches of rainfall in the southwest deserts can cause massive flooding and claim innocent lives, as we've seen throughout this list.